We got the Zev OZ-9 out on the range today. We're going to try it out. So this is the Hyper Comp. As you can see, you have the ports on the top right there. It uses Magpul magazines. Think about this gun as a Gen 5 Glock with a Gen 3 recoil spring, totally tricked out. Flat face trigger right there, optics ready, grip modules can be changed. A lot to go over, but I want to take first shots right now. And we have a new cool spinner target out here at the range that I'm excited to use. So whether you're a Glock fanboy or you're not, today's video is for you because we're going to be taking a stock Glock, comparing that to the Zev OZ-9 Hyper Comp. And we are going to be taking what makes the Hyper Comp so special and quote unquote building that with our stock Glock. And so we'll be looking at some of the most common complaints and upgrades that stock Glock owners will do and seeing if that cost turns out to be more, less, or about the same than something like the Hyper Comp. And the whole idea of the video is to tell you whether I think it's worth even buying a stock Glock, and I'll give you those pros and cons and how these two stack up against each other and really what kind of difference this makes at the range. Let's go and get into it. Now let's start with one of the most common complaints on any Glock. That is going to be those sights right there. They're plastic, they're junk, and you can get stock Glock night sights, but there's better options out there. Okay, so if we go with something like a Trijicon HD, you're about 175 bucks. Go with something like an Ameriglow, $100 roughly. So that takes care of that. I'm going to try to use as many Zev parts, by the way, as I can in this fake build. Now let's talk about that flat face pro trigger from Zev. 135 bucks. All right, so we're roughly $300 into this thing. Another common complaint is the grip angle. And so what people will do is they will, if you have one of the older gens, they'll shave down the grip. They will modify this back strap here to give it a different angle, take away some of that hump, all kinds of things, double undercut trigger guard. So that's a really common thing that people will like to do. Zev actually sells their lowers here. And so essentially you have all those options, right? You can go with a heavy stipple job. You can go, they have a variety of different things they do. You can go double undercut or single undercut. Finger grooves, you can slightly remove those finger grooves or you can leave them, whatever you want to do. And that's like, 175 bucks. So now we're up to almost 500 bucks. On top of our base Glock, anywhere from 550 to let's just say 700 bucks for an MOS version. I always try to use the smaller number that I can. And again, I can't tell you where to go and, buy a gun and all that kind of stuff because of YouTube's rules. Not mine, it's theirs. But regardless, these things can be found for about those prices, okay? And things are always subject to change. So I'm just talking in today's pricing. So if we take that 500 and let's just meet in the middle between an MOS and a standard Glock, we're essentially at about 1,100 bucks. Now, those three changes are pretty important. Now, you have some smaller things like extended magazine releases. You also have extended slide stops. Those things are typically pretty cheap. You can always spend more money, but you can always spend less too. Okay, so if we're using a combination of Zev parts or some of the aftermarket parts, for example, you can get like an Apex drop-in trigger for like 85 bucks. So it doesn't have to be 135. I just want to build it as close to the Hyper Comp as we can. Speaking of that, one of the biggest things that the Hyper Comp does really well compared to the 47 is the way they've designed these ports. So you'll notice when we pull the slide back, they actually have this slide milled out right in here, and so that rides around these top ports. Also, they have pinned the front sight to the barrel as well, as opposed to the front sight on a standard Glock with the little screw underneath. And like you're about to see, the comping and the way they've designed this gun makes a huge difference in the way this gun shoots compared to a stock Glock and the muzzle rise in the gun. Woo! Who's your boy? Let's go, baby. And so as y'all know, I'm not a Glock hater. I might be a Glock denier. But if I were to own a Glock, this gun has a lot of the things that I would want to see from a new Glock. Very nice. Much better. Yeah, it's just those sights, man. I can't do it.
And I turned my ringer off for you.
Yeah, don't let that shit happen again. I don't know if you don't know this by now, but this is a serious operation, Mike. You know, we don't play no games.
I hear you.
You've known me for a long time. You know I don't play no games.
Well, I've talked to your wife about that.
Yeah, that's all right. That muzzle is flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a bit more muzzle riding this one.
Yeah. I can see it on the camera. And if you were to shoot that gun just by itself, you probably wouldn't even think about it. But when you shoot them back to back,
Well, you see the groupings.
yeah, it's impressive, you know, and I've never thought of Glocks as like, you know, a ton of muzzle rise, you know, in the gun, but man, when you shoot it with compared to something like the Hypercomp, it makes such a huge difference. And so that was impressive to see. This Hypercomp slide, Zev actually sells. It's like $1,100 complete as you see it right here. And this isn't the only option, right? Grey Ghost makes some really cool slides for Glocks, and Lone Wolf and Faxon barrels, and you know there's some companies out there that do ported barrels that work with their slides, so you get that benefit as well. And so either way, if you go on the low end, you're going to be, you know, with a custom slide and a barrel, $600 on the low end, you know, up to $1,100 for the Hypercomp. And that makes a big difference. Like we've seen over the years, man, companies that are porting their guns, it's incredible how much of a difference that actually makes. Okay, so this right here is a special gun and a special slide setup that they've done specifically, and we can get the same results from our Glock, but already now it's cost us more to do that than it has to just get a Zev or one of the other options for the Gucci Glocks or custom Glocks. Now I do want to show you the internals here as well. So on the Zev on your left here, you can see how much beefier the rails are front and rear compared to the standard Glock 19. There might be some other minor things that I see in here. It looks like they got their own sear in the Zev, of course. But other than that, the positioning of pretty much everything else, minus this extended beaver tail, is about the same. You know, you of course get a stainless steel guide rod right there compared to the polymer one on the Glock. So it's just all of these little things, and I say little, I mean Zev really did an amazing job of making this gun, you know, something totally different. You know, I mean, it almost, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't even think it was a Glock. So me and Mike are in consensus right now as far as the gun. Just after taking our first shots, the gun is nice. They've done a lot of great things to it, but the contrast with the sights is awful. You got black on black, and it really doesn't help to pick that sight up quickly. I got a Glock 47 holster right here, but if I were to draw this, of course it could be the grip angle too, honestly. I don't know, that's pretty natural. It's got a, that's actually not too bad. I just wish there was contrast in that front sight. But man, it's a good shooter. Ah. That would give me a little bit of trouble. Oh, got a double feed there. Had a double feed. Now we are within 100 rounds, so. Okay, failure to extract. Alright, we'll keep an eye on that. And so if we take our stock Glock and we modify it to the level of the Zev, you know, we're over $2,000 at this point. So as far as saving money in these things, not really. One benefit you have if you do this with a stock Glock, though, is that you can do it over time. You don't have to do all of these things at once. And let's be honest, man, $1,900, $2,000 for a pistol, that's a lot of money to fork out at one time. And so if I can buy a $550, $600 Glock and then slowly start to build these things up, that for a lot of people makes a lot of sense. And no matter what you put on your stock Glock and make it into your own version of a Gucci Glock, or no matter how heavily modified that Glock is, you will never get all of that money back out of it. And so that's one thing with the Zev. Like I said, man, people know what it is. They know it was done right, and they are then willing to pay good money to buy something like this on the used market. One thing you will notice, though, is that on the Zev, the lower right here, this is a steel receiver, okay? And it's held in by that pin right there, and so you have a fully integrated locking block right here. And so by pushing that pin out, you can swap these grip modules around, or, you know, whatever you want to do. So that's just something that comes with the Zev specifically, okay? That coupled with something else I didn't mention is the extended mag well. That's another pretty huge upgrade, something that you can do on a Glock, you know, 130 bucks, something like that. One thing I don't like about the Zev, they send you these Magpul mags. I don't know if that's something they have to do. They ran fine for me. I would just rather have the OEM mags with the Glock. And so really when it comes down to it, it's going to depend highly upon your budget. You know, if you need to take the time, then I totally understand that, right? But let's just take the upfront cost out of it. You'd actually be cheaper with the build we just did buying something like this over that. And of course that doesn't account for, some people may not like this. You may want to go with that Gray Ghost or Fax and Barrel or whatever. You may want to make this thing into something totally different. But if you like the look of the Zev, they've honestly done an incredible job. And I hope that the shooting and what we did in this video shows you just how good this thing is. Now, one thing that I always talk about is any kind of issues we had. With the 47, when we did our first video with it, we had some issues with it. And then after about 120 rounds, those things cleared up. Haven't had any issues since. The Zev, Within 100 rounds, we were having a bunch of failures to extract. So we sent them back, we got the pistol back, and you've seen that one issue within 100 rounds on the gun. And so no matter if it's a $80,000 Suburban, a $2,000 Zev, a $600 Glock, Smith & Wesson, SIG, whatever, any man-made object can fail if the issues are resolved the first time. And how the company responds is what I try to gauge those things on. Is it annoying? Yes. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Is it ideal, especially in a self-defense situation? Of course it's not. That's why we always suggest at least running 100, 200 rounds through your new guns, so that way you can pinpoint any kind of issues that may be there, you know, any kind of break-in period, whatever. But, you know, Zev responded the way I want to see them respond, and as a consumer, that's how you want to see them respond. So I did not want to do this video, though, and not at least mention some of those things that happen. I'd love to hear your opinion, man. Do you think it's worth buying stock Glocks? If you buy stock Glocks, what are your first upgrades that you do? Make sure you leave those down below. If you like this video, maybe you'll like one of these other ones that we've done here recently. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.